The Hive City was a labyrinth of steel and smoke, a sprawling industrial nightmare where every corner reeked of oil, ash, and the faint tang of ozone from malfunctioning machinery. The streets below were choked with the detritus of constant warfare, rubble from collapsed buildings mingling with the corpses of those unfortunate enough to be caught in the last skirmish. Above, towering spires reached into the perpetually gray sky, their surfaces pockmarked with scorch marks and bullet holes, testament to decades of unending conflict. Shadows clung to every crevice, curling around support beams and the jagged remains of scaffolding, offering perfect concealment for any predator willing to wait patiently for the chaos to become its hunting ground. In one of these alleys, barely wide enough to allow a single cargo hover to squeeze through, the predator observed silently, its cloak blending seamlessly with the darkness. Its thermal vision flickered across the scene, revealing clusters of Imperial Guardsmen moving in formations that were hasty and disorganized, yet meticulous in their attempts to maintain some semblance of order amid the wreckage. Each man carried the weight of duty, the knowledge that one misstep could mean instant death in a city where survival was a gamble and every corner could harbor a lethal enemy. From its vantage point high atop a crumbling ledge, the predator studied them like a scholar reading a complex manuscript, noting patterns in their patrols, timing between sentries, and even the subtle twitches that betrayed fear or fatigue. The air vibrated faintly with the hum of distant machinery, and the faint smell of burning fuel mingled with the metallic tang of blood. From above, the predator could see the city alive with movement, servitors trundling along conveyor belts, their mechanical limbs clanking rhythmically, Imperial vehicles navigating the narrow streets, their treads grinding against debris, and squads of guardsmen communicating through muffled vox channels, unaware of the silent watcher tracking every step. The hunter's presence was ghost-like, each movement calculated, deliberate, and unseen. Every flicker of shadow, every whisper of air, was a signal in its mind, a map of opportunities and threats forming in real time. The guardsmen were uneasy, their eyes scanning the shadows with a nervous vigilance born of countless urban ambushes. They had been briefed about insurgents, maybe even rogue psykers or minor demon incursions, but nothing in their training had prepared them for the level of predation now stalking them. The predator noticed how they instinctively formed tighter clusters when a distant explosion rattled the street, how their footsteps hesitated over shattered glass and uneven surfaces. It noted the faint tremor in one corporal's hands as he checked his lasgun, the way another soldier's jaw clenched, a subtle reaction to adrenaline coursing through his veins. To the predator, these were not just physical weaknesses. They were openings, the tiniest cracks in the armor of vigilance that it would exploit. From its vantage point, the predator could watch entire squads navigate through the industrial maze below. Each turn in the corridor, each stairwell descending into darker regions, offered new opportunities. The hunter's eyes, enhanced and meticulous, detected patterns the guardsmen themselves could not see. The way one squad always paused at a junction, the way a lone sentinel lingered too long at a hatch before moving on. It cataloged each movement with cold precision, aware that patience was its greatest ally. Unlike the guardsmen, who were conditioned to act swiftly and react under pressure, the predator could afford to wait, blending with the shadows until the perfect moment arrived. The city itself seemed almost complicit in the hunt, its broken architecture and flickering lights casting long, jagged shadows across the ground. The hum of distant generators, the occasional crash of falling debris, and the hiss of overpressurized pipes created a symphony of ambient noise in which the predator could hide its own presence. Its targeting systems, integrated with its vision and cloaking, calculated trajectories, distances, and probabilities of success for each possible strike. Yet despite the mechanical efficiency, There was an artistry in its observation, a human-like patience and attention to detail in the way it studied its prey. Each guardsman was assessed not as a nameless target, but as a participant in a complex dance of survival, where the hunter was always several steps ahead. Occasionally, the predator's gaze shifted from the guardsman to the larger environment. The broken catwalks, the smoking chimneys, the massive warped pipes carrying molten industrial fluids. Each of these elements offered both opportunities and risks, a terrain map that could be used for ambush or avoidance. The predator calculated angles of descent, potential cover spots, and escape routes with a fluidity that felt almost organic. Despite being a lethal hunter, it exhibited a patience that mirrored human caution, an understanding that hasty action could compromise the delicate balance of its advantage. The predator lingered for hours, a silent sentinel among the ruins, watching, studying, and anticipating. It knew the guardsmen were part of a larger machinery, but here, in the shadows, the predator was the apex force, the unseen hunter turning every instinct and technology at its disposal into a symphony of calculated threat. As the night deepened and the smoke thickened, it became more than a hunter in a city of war. It became a shadow over life itself, an unseen force observing humanity at its most vulnerable and preparing for the moment when the hunt would begin. The rumor had begun quietly, whispered among the ranks of the Space Marines like the faint hum of distant machinery, growing louder with each retelling, until it became impossible to ignore. Patrols reported fleeting shadows, movements that vanished before they could be tracked, and the faintest traces of thermal signatures that did not match anything known to their codex. The chapter master, a towering figure of discipline and iron resolve, ordered an immediate investigation, dispatching squads into the ruined streets of the Hive City to uncover the source of the unseen threat. Each Marine moved with the precision and confidence honed over centuries of war, their ceramite armor gleaming dimly beneath the flickering lights of the devastated city. The sound of bolters being checked, chainswords tested, and Vox communications clicked in and out created a tense rhythm. The soldiers' vigilance sharpened by an unspoken awareness that something alien was stalking them. As they advanced, the streets twisted and folded in impossible ways, corridors of steel and concrete rising and falling like the twisted architecture of a nightmare. Rubble from collapsed buildings formed natural barricades, while sparks from exposed power conduits arced and hissed, casting momentary light over the patrol's careful movements. The Marines relied on their extensive training, scanning every shadow and corner, aware that the Hive City had been a battlefield long before their arrival. Yet nothing in the histories or strategic reports had prepared them for a predator that moved with a silence that defied comprehension. It was as if the city itself had grown a new predator, one that studied, anticipated, and struck with a precision that could only be described as preternatural. The squad sergeant signaled for a halt, his hand raised as his helm's sensors flicked through multiple spectrums. Thermal readings were intermittent, strange blips that appeared and disappeared as if mocking the disciplined patrol. His eyes, sharp behind the lenses of his helmet, swept the surrounding debris, noting the angle of shadows, the slight distortions in the air that indicated movement. Every muscle in his body was coiled, ready for the instant they would need to act. He was a veteran, and even veterans could sense when something was not just dangerous, but intelligent in its lethality. The whispers of this hunter had spoken of its cunning, of the way it did not merely kill, but observed, learned, and adapted. The Marines pressed forward cautiously, their formation tight, weapons raised to intercept any threat. Each squad member understood the stakes. Failure here could mean not just their deaths, but a cascade of destruction across the sector. Every corner was a potential ambush. Every shadow a possible vantage point for a predator unseen. The sergeant's commands were precise and measured, directing the squad through the twisting streets, keeping them alert to both the physical environment and the intangible sense of being watched. They moved like a living organism, every step deliberate, every scan methodical. Yet the predator remained invisible, an unseen presence calculating their every move. As they navigated deeper into the city, evidence of previous hunts became apparent. The remains of chaos cultists, their bodies marked with strange, meticulous injuries, littered the streets. Thermal readings picked up fleeting signatures, disappearing as quickly as they appeared, leaving only the faintest traces of movement and a growing tension among the Marines. It was a psychological assault as much as a physical one. Knowing they were being observed, studied, made every step feel heavier, every noise more sinister. The Predator's methodical approach contrasted sharply with the Marines' disciplined advance, each side moving according to principles that, while fundamentally different, were equally lethal. A sudden movement caught the sergeant's eye, a flicker of heat behind a collapsed support beam. He raised his bolter, commanding his squad to hold their positions. The movement ceased as quickly as it had appeared, leaving only the faintest distortion in the air. The Marines exchanged glances behind their visors, understanding the implications. This was no ordinary foe. It was intelligent, patient, and cunning, using fear itself as a weapon. The squad adjusted their formation, spreading slightly to cover multiple angles while remaining close enough to support one another at a moment's notice. Every sense was heightened, the faintest vibrations in the rubble, the subtle changes in ambient temperature, all feeding into a web of awareness designed to detect the predator before it could strike. The predator observed from above, perched on the jagged edge of a half-collapsed tower, its thermal vision tracking the Marines' movements with meticulous attention. It noted the way their armor absorbed light, the patterns of their patrols, and the small inconsistencies that human, or even enhanced human behavior, inevitably produced under stress. It understood the difference between instinct and calculation, recognizing that these were soldiers trained to anticipate every scenario except the one they were now facing. With every step the Marines took, the predator adapted, its strategies evolving to match the tactics of these formidable foes. Down below, the patrol continued, unaware of how close the hunter truly was. The shadows seemed to move against them, corridors narrowing and expanding in a manner that unnerved even the most disciplined of the squad. The sergeant's voice was calm but firm over the vox, directing attention to possible entry points and escape routes. He calculated risks with the precision of a tactician, but the predator had already anticipated these decisions, adjusting its path silently, blending into the ruins, waiting for the perfect moment when patience and precision would converge into lethal action. As the Marines advanced, the sense of being stalked intensified, subtle cues registering subconsciously. The hum of power generators seemed to shift in tone. A shadow flickered across a wall with no discernible source, and the faintest echo of movement teased their perception. The predator's presence was a constant, invisible pressure, shaping the patrol's decisions even before they realized it. In this intricate dance, every observation, every reaction was being noted, cataloged, and countered with an intelligence that rivaled the most disciplined human or enhanced mind. The streets of the Hive City were a chaotic maze of fire, smoke, and twisted metal. a landscape scarred by decades of unending warfare. And into this crucible of destruction moved the Predator, a silent specter whose every step was calculated with a lethal precision. Chaos cultists ran amok through the ruined corridors, their chants echoing against the high, shattered walls, voices ragged with frenzy and devotion to dark powers they barely understood. The Predator observed from a vantage point atop a crumbling support beam, its cloaking technology rendering it nearly invisible against the backdrop of flickering fires and collapsing structures. Its thermal vision scanned the frenzy below, isolating the weak points in the cultist formations, cataloging the potential threat each one posed, and calculating the most efficient sequence for elimination. It moved like a shadow among shadows, deliberate in its patience, waiting for the moment when the chaos would provide the perfect opening. From above, the scene was almost mesmerizing. The cultists, driven by fervor and madness, had no concept of the Predator watching them, calculating, adapting. They moved as a single chaotic organism. Yet every individual action revealed a pattern that the hunter could exploit. One cultist paused to raise a crude blade, unaware of the invisible presence above, while another attempted to corner a terrified Imperial citizen, fleeing through the alleyways. The Predator analyzed their motions with a methodical clarity, recognizing the signals of fear and aggression, mapping a course that would allow it to strike without being seen, turning the chaos into a hunting ground of unmatched efficiency. With a silent leap, the Predator descended from its perch, landing on the rubble-strewn street with barely a sound, its movement imperceptible, except to the enhanced sensors in its helm. The cultists, too preoccupied with their own violent ritual, did not notice the shimmer of its cloak as it activated, adjusting its optical camouflage to the subtle variations of light and shadow around it. Its wrist-mounted blades extended with a quiet hiss, each edge honed to perfection, ready to strike with surgical precision. The Predator's approach was both tactical and artistic, a deadly dance choreographed in anticipation of the moment it would engage. It was not merely a killer, it was a hunter with a meticulous sense of timing and strategy, understanding that even the most frenzied enemies could be subdued efficiently if observed and approached correctly. The first strike was swift and invisible, a blur of motion that ended the life of a cultist before his companions could react. There was no warning, no cry of alarm, only the faintest ripple of thermal disturbance that passed unnoticed in the chaos of the burning city. Another cultist attempted to rally his comrades, swinging a jagged blade in frantic arcs, but the Predator was already repositioning, calculating angles and distances, exploiting the uneven terrain to maintain the advantage. Its targeting systems integrated seamlessly with its instincts, blending observation, prediction, and execution into a fluid sequence that rendered it almost untouchable. Each movement was deliberate, each strike precise, leaving the cultists bewildered and unable to comprehend the source of their destruction. The cultists attempted to regroup, their chants growing louder, voices straining against the shock of losing comrades to an invisible adversary. They moved as a cluster now, trying to cover one another and watch the surrounding area. But the Predator anticipated their defensive formations, predicting how fear and instinct would influence their actions. It advanced silently through the wreckage, using the high ground, collapsing scaffolds, and smoke-filled corridors to obscure its presence. Its thermal vision highlighted the subtle differences in body temperature, allowing it to track movements even when visual cues were insufficient. Every path the cultists chose was already calculated in the Predator's mind. Every escape route, every hiding spot, analyzed and accounted for in the intricate choreography of the hunt. A small group of cultists attempted to flank what they believed was the Predator's position, moving through the narrow corridors with makeshift weapons raised. The Predator shifted positions silently, leaping from overhead catwalks to rubble piles, maintaining the perfect angle of approach. It struck again, with unerring accuracy, neutralizing threats before they realized what was happening. The movement was fluid, almost elegant in its efficiency, a testament to the Predator's discipline and patience. The cultists, despite their fervor in numbers, were mere obstacles, each eliminated with a precision that left the remaining members in a state of panic and confusion. Amid the chaos, the Predator's attention was drawn to a single cultist, attempting to wield a psychic power, a flicker of warp energy sparking from his fingertips. The hunter paused for a fraction of a second, recalibrating its approach to account for the new, unpredictable threat. Its targeting systems adjusted, analyzing the potential danger and the optimal method to neutralize it without exposure. With a calculated movement, the Predator closed the distance, blades slicing through the air with a whisper of sound, ending the psychic threat before it could manifest fully. The other cultists' morale shattered at the sight of their power nullified so swiftly, fear now dominating every action. And the Predator exploited this psychological advantage as effectively as it did the physical terrain. The Predator's hunt continued through the winding streets and ruined corridors, using every element of the environment to its advantage. Smoke from burning debris masked its movements. Overturned carts and scattered rubble provided cover and elevated vantage points. And the screams of dying cultists echoed through the alleys, reinforcing the aura of unstoppable force that it projected. It moved with patience, never reckless, observing, calculating, and striking only when the perfect opportunity presented itself. The chaos below became a canvas for its predation, each strike a brushstroke of lethal artistry, each movement an integration of observation, strategy, and raw combat skill. The Orks were a crude, brutal species, a mass of green skin, muscle, and uncontrolled violence, thriving on chaos and the thrill of battle. Yet even they began to notice the strange disappearances among their warband. At first, it was dismissed as the usual carnage of skirmishes with Imperial forces or clashes with rival Ork mobs, but the pattern quickly became impossible to ignore. Individual warriors, sometimes small groups, would vanish without a trace, leaving behind only scattered weapons and signs of a struggle that did not match the usual brutality of their fights. The larger Ork leaders, instinctively suspicious and aggressive by nature, began to grumble and argue, their crude voices echoing across the ruined terrain of their encampment. Something was hunting them, something unseen, something clever, and the notion of being stalked, unsettled, even creatures bred for violence. The Predator observed from a ridge above the Ork encampment, its silhouette invisible to the naked eye, its cloaking technology blending perfectly with the jagged rocks and twisted metal surrounding it. Thermal vision flickered over the mass of Orks below, revealing clusters of heat signatures in constant motion, some cautious, others completely oblivious to the hidden threat. The Predator noted the differences in size, strength, and alertness among them, analyzing which targets posed the most immediate danger and which would provide the most satisfying challenge. To an Ork, raw strength and aggression were everything, yet these very traits made them predictable in their patterns of movement. And to the Predator, predictability was an opportunity. The warband was preparing for yet another assault on a nearby Imperial outpost, stacking crude explosives, sharpening jagged blades, and bellowing guttural war cries that rattled through the canyon-like streets. They were loud, confident, and dangerously unaware. Every gesture and motion a signal to the Predator, mapping the battlefield as a living, breathing hunting ground. It was fascinated by their brutish intelligence, by the way they communicated in a combination of shouts, gestures, and instinctive coordination. And yet, it recognized their blind spots, their overconfidence, their lack of subtlety, and their disregard for danger created openings that the Predator could exploit with surgical precision. A smaller group of Orks broke off from the main mob, wandering toward a smoking ruin, weapons at the ready, eager for a fight that they could claim as their own. The Predator's thermal optics locked onto them, noting the heat of their bodies, the tension in their muscles, the slight hesitations that came naturally even to the most battle-hardened Ork. From its elevated perch, it planned the approach, moving silently along fractured scaffolding, over jagged debris, and across narrow ledges. Its movements were imperceptible, almost an extension of the shadows themselves, a phantom stalking a beast of raw power. As the Orks advanced deeper into the ruined street, the first strike came without warning. The Predator dropped down from above, its motion swift and controlled, slashing a single Ork with its wrist blade. The creature barely had time to react before it collapsed, the shock reverberating through the remaining Orks. Confusion spread immediately, and the instinctive aggression of the Orks turned inward, some bellowing at one another in suspicion, others scanning the environment with wild, uncoordinated motions. The Predator used this confusion, retreating into the shadows and letting fear dictate the Orks' movements, guiding them toward traps, ambush points, and the dead ends of the ruined cityscape. The Orks attempted to regroup, their crude coordination struggling against the invisible intelligence hunting them. They stomped, swung their weapons, and hurled rocks, trying to force an ambush, but the Predator was always one step ahead. It watched their reactions carefully, noting patterns in how they responded to perceived threats, calculating distances and angles, preparing each engagement with patience and precision. When it struck again, it did so with almost artistic brutality, removing the strongest threats first, leaving the weaker ones trembling in terror. The hunt was not just physical, it was psychological, a mastery of fear that the Predator understood instinctively, turning the Orks' natural aggression against them. The larger warband began to panic as they realized their numbers were dwindling inexplicably. Some attempted to climb higher vantage points, seeking to spot the hunter. Others tried to barricade themselves behind twisted metal and rubble. But the Predator adapted to each maneuver, using its advanced technology and natural cunning to remain unseen, striking from above, from the sides, and even from below as it manipulated the battlefield. It was patient, waiting for the precise moment to take down multiple targets with maximum efficiency. Each strike measured, deliberate, and terrifying in its execution. The Predator's mind cataloged every Ork's behavior, predicting movements and responses with unnerving accuracy. Its wrist blades flashed again. Another Ork dropped before it could even comprehend the threat. The remaining creatures grew louder, their bellows of rage mixed with fear, their coordination falling apart under the weight of an enemy they could neither see nor understand. The city around them became part of the hunt, smoke hiding the Predator's movements, debris providing cover for ambushes, and narrow alleys forcing the Orks into paths of its choosing. Each engagement was a calculated lesson in efficiency and patience, turning the raw chaos of Ork violence into a controlled symphony of predation. The Predator paused briefly on a high ledge, observing the remaining survivors, assessing their morale, strength, and positions. Its thermal optics painted a map of opportunity, highlighting the weakest, the most reckless, and the most dangerous. Each strike to come would be more devastating than the last, and it reveled in the anticipation, the meticulous planning, and the perfect execution that defined it as a hunter of unparalleled skill. The Orks, for all their strength and savagery, were now mere pawns in a hunt that was as psychological as it was physical. And the Predator was the master of this deadly game. The air in the Hive City was thick with the stench of ozone and burning metal, a heavy blanket that hung over the streets like a suffocating veil. From its perch atop a half-collapsed factory spire, the Predator surveyed the chaos below, its thermal vision cutting through smoke and shadow to reveal the presence of hidden psykers weaving their powers amidst the rubble. These individuals, few in number but potent in their psychic potential, were unpredictable threats. Their minds capable of reaching across reality itself, yet utterly unaware that an unseen hunter was watching them with cold, calculating precision. The Predator's sensors traced their heat signatures and the subtle distortions of the warp energy they emitted, noting fluctuations in focus, moments of hesitation, and the physical toll that channeling such power demanded. Each psyker was a puzzle, a variable in an equation of predation. And the Predator's mind worked tirelessly to solve it before moving in for the strike. The city streets below were a labyrinth of collapsed scaffolding, scorched buildings, and rivers of molten industrial waste. Imperial Guardsmen patrolled cautiously, their eyes flicking toward shadows in corners where nothing appeared to exist. They were already wary of insurgents and cultists, but the presence of a predator, a being capable of anticipating movement and exploiting instinct, was a danger they could scarcely imagine. The psykers themselves were oblivious to the hunter's gaze, focusing intently on subtle manipulations of the warp, their hands trembling slightly as energy arced and shimmered around them. Their powers were raw, unrefined, and even minor mistakes could result in catastrophic feedback. To the Predator, this was not only a challenge, but an opportunity to strike with perfect timing, exploiting their momentary vulnerability as their concentration wavered. The Predator moved silently along a network of fractured catwalks, its cloaking device shimmering faintly as it adapted to the shifting light of the burning city. Every step was deliberate, every movement calculated to maintain the element of surprise. Its thermal vision highlighted the psykers' elevated body heat, the subtle strain in their muscles, and the distortion in the air caused by the warp energy surrounding them. The Predator paused, analyzing the paths they were taking, the positions of Imperial Guardsmen nearby, and the potential consequences of a hasty strike. Patience was its ally, and it waited for the precise alignment of variables that would allow it to neutralize the psychic threats efficiently and without detection. One psyker, standing atop a rubble pile, raised his arms as energy crackled around him, attempting to unleash a minor psychic blast against a distant Imperial vehicle. The Predator noted the exact timing of the release, the way the psyker's breathing faltered, the momentary flash of heat as the strain of channeling power peaked. It calculated the perfect trajectory to approach unseen, using shadows and the broken architecture as cover, descending with lethal grace. The hunter's wrist blades extended silently, and with a swift, precise motion, it moved in to eliminate the psyker before the spell could complete, cutting off the threat before it could manifest. The psychic energy collapsed in a harmless flicker, leaving the psyker's body crumpled and the guardsmen around him unaware of the invisible Predator's intervention. Meanwhile, another psyker attempted to react, sensing the sudden interruption in the warp, their hands flaring with defensive energy. The Predator's motion was fluid, an extension of calculation and instinct. It leapt across the debris, landing just beyond the psyker's field of vision, and adjusted its approach to account for the unpredictable psychic energy. Its targeting system overlaid predictive trajectories, calculating potential outcomes for every strike, every movement. It struck with precision, neutralizing the second psyker in a blur of motion, leaving only the faintest heat signature that quickly dissipated into the surrounding rubble. The guardsmen, shaken by the strange disappearance of the first psyker and the sudden collapse of the second, began scanning the environment frantically, unaware that their fear had been orchestrated by an unseen force of unmatched cunning. The Predator's attention shifted to a third psyker, attempting to flee through a narrow alley. The warp energy around this individual distorted the air, creating shimmering illusions and false readings that could confuse even the most disciplined observer. But the Predator's optics adjusted, filtering out interference and reading the subtle cues of muscle tension, heat, and movement that betrayed the psyker's true location. It pursued silently, using the ruined architecture to its advantage, leaping from ledge to rubble pile, calculating each landing point and strike angle with deadly accuracy. The psykers' frantic gestures only provided more data, revealing instinctive patterns that could be exploited to guarantee the predator's success. As the hunt continued, the predator demonstrated not only physical dominance, but intellectual superiority, predicting the psykers' actions before they fully realized them themselves. It understood the strain of manipulating warp energy, the brief lapses in focus that came with exertion, and the psychological stress of being hunted in a city where shadows could conceal an invisible death. Each action was measured, every movement deliberate, and each strike executed with perfection. The psykers' powers, formidable in isolation, became liabilities under the predator's cold observation. Their abilities countered not by brute force, but by superior timing, positioning, and anticipation. The city itself became part of the hunt. Collapsing structures, streams of molten metal, and smoke-filled corridors provided the predator with natural cover and tactical advantages. It moved seamlessly through the environment, analyzing heat differentials, angles of attack, and the likely reactions of both psykers and Imperial Guardsmen. The predator's patience was infinite, its intelligence methodical, and its ability to blend observation, technology, and instinct rendered it virtually unstoppable. Each psychic target neutralized reinforced its mastery over the battlefield, transforming what could have been chaos into a calculated, controlled hunt that left fear and destruction in its wake. The air above the devastated industrial district shimmered with heat and smoke as the predator's gaze swept across the ruined streets, searching for its next challenge. A movement in the distance caught its attention. A lone Tyranid warrior, its chitinous carapace glinting in the dim, flickering light from the fires consuming the city. This was no mindless hive drone. Even alone, it exuded a lethal aura, muscles coiled with predatory instinct, claws flexing, and mandibles clicking as it sensed the foreign presence. The predator's thermal vision highlighted the warrior's elevated body heat, and its sensors picked up the subtle vibrations in the air and ground caused by the Tyranid's movements. It was the first truly worthy test, a creature whose raw physical power and alien cunning presented a challenge that even the predator had not yet faced in this war-torn urban landscape. The Tyranid moved with uncanny speed, its limbs adapting fluidly to the ruined terrain, scaling rubble and jagged metal with an ease that belied its monstrous size. The predator studied it, noting every step, every shift in weight, every flicker of awareness as the alien beast hunted instinctively, unaware of the hunter tracking it. There was intelligence in the Tyranid's movements, a form of calculated brutality that set it apart from the other creatures the predator had faced in this environment. The two beings were locked in a silent assessment, each recognizing the other as a potential threat, yet neither acting prematurely. The city itself became a battlefield of shadows, fire, and ash, where the slightest miscalculation could mean death. The predator adjusted its approach, moving along the upper ledges of collapsed buildings, staying just out of the Tyranid's line of sight. Every step was deliberate, every leap measured, using the ruins as both cover and vantage point. Its enhanced vision tracked micro-movements in the Tyranid's muscles, predicting where it would strike, how it would turn, and when it might pause. The Tyranid, meanwhile, seemed to sense something amiss, its head tilting, mandibles clicking with a subtle instinctive recognition of an unseen predator. It paused briefly, sniffing the air and listening to the faintest vibrations, demonstrating that even a creature, bred solely for destruction, could feel the pressure of a hunter, whose patience and intelligence matched its own physical prowess. The first engagement was sudden and violent. The predator leapt from a jagged rooftop, descending upon the Tyranid with blinding speed, its wrist blades extended and ready. The Tyranid reacted almost instinctively, swiping with a massive claw that tore through the air where the predator had been mere fractions of a second earlier. The hunter twisted mid-air, narrowly avoiding the strike, landing behind a steel beam to maintain cover. Sparks flew where claw met metal, a cacophony of sound that echoed across the ruined streets. The predator's targeting system recalibrated instantly, integrating the Tyranid's movements, its strength, and its apparent strategy into the next phase of the hunt. The Tyranid advanced, moving with terrifying grace despite its bulk, its claws raking across debris and metal as it sought to close the distance. The predator responded with fluid precision, attacking and retreating in calculated bursts. Every strike was designed to test the Tyranid's reactions, probing for weaknesses in muscle coordination and reflexes. The alien warrior's resilience was remarkable, shrugging off glancing blows and countering with brute force that would have crushed lesser opponents. Yet the predator was patient, understanding that this hunt was as much about endurance and strategy as it was about raw power. It adapted with each encounter, learning from the Tyranid's behavior, anticipating its next move, and refining its approach to exploit even the smallest lapse in the creature's instinctive defenses. The battlefield became a deadly chessboard, the predator using the environment to its advantage. Smoke-filled corridors, collapsing scaffolds, and rivers of molten metal created natural obstacles and tactical opportunities. The Tyranid lunged across debris, its movements fluid, but the predator used these moments to strike from unexpected angles, launching attacks with a precision that left no room for error. Each encounter was brutal, a combination of speed, strength, and calculated timing, pushing both hunter and hunted to the limits of their physical and mental capacities. The predator observed how the Tyranid's muscles tensed before each strike, how its claws carved arcs through the air, and how its head and eyes tracked movements instinctively, and it adapted, countering with equal cunning and agility. At one point, the Tyranid cornered the predator near the edge of a crumbling platform, its claws raking the air, jaws snapping with lethal intent. The predator's response was instantaneous. It rolled beneath the strike, letting the Tyranid's momentum carry it past, and came up behind the alien, striking with precision blades that scored its chitin and elicited a guttural, resonant scream. Yet the Tyranid's resilience was staggering, and it turned with astonishing speed, forcing the predator to leap back, reassessing its strategy mid-combat. The dance of predator and alien continued, each testing the other, calculating responses, and exploiting every minor advantage offered by the terrain and timing. The confrontation escalated in intensity as the Tyranid adapted to the predator's hunting style. It began to anticipate jumps, predicting where the hunter might land and adjusting its attacks accordingly. The predator, in turn, analyzed these adaptations, modifying its strikes, movement patterns, and attack sequences to stay one step ahead. Every motion was deliberate, every strike a calculated risk, and the city around them became both weapon and shield, a dynamic battlefield that amplified the lethality of the encounter. Sparks flew, debris shifted, and the acrid scent of molten metal and blood filled the air as both creatures tested the boundaries of their abilities, each proving to the other that survival in this war-torn environment required not only strength, but intelligence and adaptability. The Inquisition had been alerted to a series of disturbing reports, whispers of bodies found torn apart with surgical precision, strange energy readings in the Hive Cities' ruins, and rumors of an unseen predator moving among the inhabitants and soldiers alike. The elite agents dispatched to investigate moved like shadows themselves, their armor and robes dark against the flickering light of burning buildings and scorched streets. Each member of the strike team carried an array of weapons, arcane tools, and psychic wards designed to counter both the physical and metaphysical threats that might be lurking. They were trained for the extraordinary, but even among their ranks, there was an unspoken recognition that this hunt would be unlike any other. Every sense was heightened, every step deliberate, and every scan meticulous, as they sought to uncover a foe that had already claimed victims with terrifying efficiency. The Hive City was a maze of debris, smoke, and fire, streets and alleys folding into one another like the twisted corridors of a nightmare. The inquisitorial agents moved with precise coordination, communicating in subtle gestures and coded Vox transmissions, careful not to alert any potential threats. Their eyes swept constantly for signs of movement, for heat signatures that didn't belong, for disturbances in the air that might hint at the predator's presence. The reports had described something unseen, intelligent, and lethal, and every detail of the agents' training was being called into play as they methodically searched the devastated city. Every shadow, every flicker of movement, every sound could be a clue, and the agents knew that patience and caution were their only defenses against a foe that did not abide by conventional combat rules. From the heights above, the predator observed the newcomers with cold precision, noting their formations, the types of weapons they carried, and the subtle ways in which they scanned the environment. Unlike the Imperial Guardsmen it had previously hunted, these agents were deliberate and disciplined, trained to anticipate ambushes and to respond to unseen threats. The predator adapted, recalibrating its approach, moving silently along fractured catwalks and piles of rubble, finding vantage points where it could observe without revealing itself. Its cloaking technology blended perfectly with the shadows, and its thermal vision tracked the agents' heat signatures as they moved, mapping patterns and predicting behaviors. The first encounter came not with a direct attack, but with a test of perception. One agent, a psyker trained in detecting psychic signatures and disturbances, paused as a faint shimmer in the air caught their attention. The predator had moved through the smoke, adjusting its camouflage to the subtle variations in light and temperature, and the psyker sensed only a fleeting anomaly, a ripple of presence that passed unnoticed by the others. The agents signaled the team to halt, their hand raised, eyes narrowing as they scanned the streets below. The predator studied this, noting how intelligence and training could slow its prey, and adjusted its tactics to exploit both their caution and their reliance on technology and psychic insight. The inquisitorial agents spread into the surrounding streets, checking ruins, scanning debris, and analyzing the energy signatures that hinted at recent activity. Their movements were deliberate, careful, and synchronized, reflecting centuries of combined training and discipline. Yet the predator was patient, understanding that hasty action could reveal its position. It moved silently, climbing twisted support beams, vaulting over broken walls, and using every shadow and elevation to maintain the element of surprise. Each observation was cataloged, each movement noted, and the hunter adapted to the agent's methods, predicting where they would go and when, staying always just out of reach, just beyond perception. The city itself became a dynamic element in the hunt. Collapsing catwalks, molten industrial fluids, and the ever-present smoke offered both cover and hazard, shaping the movements of both hunter and hunted. The predator leapt from high ledges to rubble piles, adjusting its approach based on thermal readings, and waited for the precise moment to strike. The agents, sensing that something was amiss, began to tighten their formations, checking one another's flanks and communicating silently through hand signals. They were methodical, but even methodical humans, or superhumanly trained agents, were susceptible to fear, hesitation, and misdirection, and the predator exploited these moments with a patience honed over countless hunts. A sudden sound, a faint scrape of metal against metal, caused one agent to turn sharply, bolter raised, scanning the shadows for movement. The predator had anticipated this reaction and shifted slightly, remaining invisible, letting the agent's focus pass over it while positioning itself for the next opportunity. It studied the agent's reactions with clinical precision, noting the psychological effect of anticipation, uncertainty, and fear on even the most disciplined hunters. Every misstep, every microsecond of hesitation was catalogued, increasing the hunter's advantage while reducing risk to itself. The agents moved deeper into the ruins, each corner checked meticulously, each alleyway scanned, each heat signature analyzed. The predator adjusted its plan dynamically, waiting for openings, exploiting the city's twisted architecture, and using the environment as a weapon as much as any blade or plasma caster. Its strikes would not come in a chaotic frenzy. They would be precise, methodical, and psychologically devastating. It understood that the mind was often the greatest vulnerability, that fear, uncertainty, and anticipation could be as lethal as any weapon in the predator's arsenal. As they approached a particularly narrow alleyway lined with broken scaffolding and smoldering debris, the predator moved silently along a high ledge, watching, calculating, and waiting. The agents paused, sensing a faint disturbance in the air, the subtle hint of a presence that did not belong. Every movement they made was careful, every scan deliberate, yet the predator remained perfectly hidden, an apex hunter observing apex hunters, learning, adapting, and preparing to strike with lethal precision at the moment the advantage was unmistakable. The ground shook with the thunderous march of Imperial Titans as they advanced through the shattered streets of the Hive City, each colossal war machine leaving deep ruts in the debris-laden terrain. Smoke and sparks from damaged machinery filled the air, mingling with the acrid scent of burning fuel and scorched metal. The predator observed from a high perch atop a partially collapsed spire, its thermal vision scanning the battlefield below. Massive silhouettes of the Titans, each armed with devastating weaponry capable of leveling entire city blocks, seemed almost invulnerable from the perspective of the guards and citizens struggling to navigate the streets. Yet the predator's calculating mind saw beyond mere size and firepower, understanding that the battlefield itself could be transformed into a hunting ground, where strategy, patience, and cunning could turn even these mechanical behemoths into tools for its lethal artistry. From above, the predator noted the coordinated movements of the Titans as they advanced, their treads grinding against rubble, their massive limbs flexing to maintain balance over unstable terrain. Each Titan was accompanied by squads of Imperial Guardsmen, moving in patterns dictated by the Titan's advance, securing the surrounding area and clearing potential ambush points. The hunter's sensors highlighted heat signatures from the pilots inside the cockpits, the faint traces of energy discharge from the war machines, and the subtle vibrations traveling through the ground as the Titan's weight pressed into the rubble. It studied these details carefully, mapping the battlefield, analyzing structural weaknesses, and anticipating the moments when the city itself could aid its hunt. The predator moved along a network of fractured catwalks, vaulting from one precarious ledge to another, each landing precise, silent, and calculated. Its cloak adjusted to the ambient light, shimmering imperceptibly as it tracked the Titan's movement from above. Every shadow, every fragment of debris, every plume of smoke became part of its strategy, offering concealment, vantage points, and potential ambush positions. Unlike the Guardsmen or even the psykers it had previously encountered, the Titans presented a challenge not of speed or subtlety, but of scale and timing. The Predator adapted, calculating distances, velocities, and trajectories, preparing to exploit both the terrain and the mechanical limitations of the massive war machines below. One Titan shifted its massive weight, its colossal legs crushing the remnants of a collapsed building, sending debris cascading into the streets. The Predator noted the vibrations, the shifting patterns of heat, and the predictable mechanical pauses as the pilot adjusted to the uneven ground. From this elevated position, it could plan its approach, considering how to navigate the massive shadows, the dangerous electrical discharges from damaged systems, and the open lines of sight to any human or xenos threat that might intervene. The hunter's mind worked with mechanical precision, integrating environmental factors, enemy positions, and its own lethal capabilities into a single, cohesive strategy for engagement. The Predator descended silently onto a partially collapsed bridge, the tremors of the Titan's march resonating through the metal beneath its feet. It crouched, analyzing the largest war machine, noting access points, the angles of fire, and the probable movements of servitors and pilot within. Unlike its previous hunts, this was a battle not only of stealth, but of timing and manipulation. A single misstep could mean detection, but the Predator thrived in such complexity, using the urban ruins to channel the Titan's power into controlled, predictable movements that it could exploit. Its wrist blades extended silently, and targeting systems began overlaying potential strike points, not on the Titan itself, but on the flanks, servitors, and vulnerable mechanical joints that might allow for disruption and tactical advantage. From its vantage point, the Predator observed the surrounding Guardsmen coordinating to cover potential ambush points, their movements disciplined yet predictable. The hunter accounted for their patrols, adjusting its position to remain invisible while simultaneously drawing their attention subtly toward the paths it had pre-selected. Each action it performed was measured, a combination of anticipation and manipulation designed to create opportunities while minimizing exposure. The massive Titans moved forward, seemingly invulnerable, but every step shifted the battlefield in ways the Predator could exploit. Debris fell, fires ignited new smoke cover, and the ground trembled beneath each mechanical footfall, masking subtle movements and allowing it to reposition undetected. The environment itself became a weapon. The Predator calculated the timing of each strike, considering how to manipulate falling beams, molten streams, and precarious scaffolding to create diversions, obstacles, or even direct damage to the advancing forces. Its eyes flickered through multiple spectrums, highlighting heat differentials and potential weak points in both the massive Titans and the surrounding terrain. Each movement was a blend of instinct, calculation, and anticipation, turning the city into a living part of the hunt. Unlike the Guardsmen, who relied on reaction and reflex, the Predator dictated the tempo, shaping the battlefield invisibly and lethally. A small Imperial vehicle skidded across a pile of rubble, bringing it dangerously close to one of the Titan's legs. The Predator noted the moment, calculating how the pilot would respond, how the Guardsmen might attempt intervention, and how the momentary chaos could be exploited. It adjusted its path, moving along high scaffolds to maintain an elevated advantage, preparing to strike at the exact moment that vulnerability and opportunity aligned. The heat signatures of the Titan's engines flared intermittently, casting brief light that revealed more than it concealed. Yet the Predator remained hidden in plain sight, integrating the environmental changes into its hunt seamlessly. As the Titans pressed forward, crushing the remnants of buildings in their path, the Predator continued to stalk from above, climbing, leaping, and repositioning with unmatched precision. Every step, every leap, every observation was part of a broader strategy to engage not just individual targets, but the battlefield itself as a complex and dynamic entity. The Predator calculated movement, timing, and environmental interaction, ready to exploit every opening, every lapse in attention, and every mechanical vulnerability. The monstrous war machines of the Imperium were titanic, powerful, and terrifying. Yet from above, observed with patience and intelligence, they became elements in a hunt that required not just strength, but cunning, anticipation, and absolute mastery of the terrain. The city's skyline was a jagged silhouette of broken spires and smoking industrial towers, a testament to decades of endless warfare and neglect. Yet into this chaos arrived the Predator, a figure of silent menace and calculated intent. Its cloaking device allowed it to move almost invisibly through the ruined streets, the shimmer of its armor blending seamlessly with the debris-laden environment. Thermal vision scanned the surroundings, highlighting both human and xenos presence in stark contrast to the cold metal and stone of the Hive City. Imperial Guardsmen moved cautiously below, their armor scuffed and scorched from previous skirmishes, bolters ready and eyes scanning every shadow. The Predator observed with the patience of a master hunter, cataloging movements, analyzing patterns, and waiting for the precise moment when its intervention would be most effective. The initial victims were minor, rogue cultists who had been attempting to rally scattered citizens into resistance against Imperial control. The Predator's first strikes were near-surgical, eliminating threats before they could react, leaving bodies arranged in patterns that were both deliberate and intimidating. The guardsmen who discovered these scenes were puzzled, attempting to identify the cause, and each new report increased tension in the sector. The Predator took advantage of this uncertainty, moving silently through the upper reaches of the ruined spires and catwalks, always observing, always calculating. Its vision traced the faint thermal signatures of those moving through the city, noting every twitch, every subtle motion that betrayed fatigue, fear, or inexperience. The Hive City itself was alive with movement, from scavenger gangs attempting to loot the remnants of destroyed factories to Imperial vehicles navigating the treacherous streets. Smoke curled through the air, mingling with the smell of scorched metal and industrial waste, creating natural cover that the Predator used to its advantage. Each alley, each collapsed corridor, each stack of rubble became part of its hunting ground. The Predator's mind processed every detail simultaneously, building a mental map of the city that allowed it to predict human and xenos behavior and to plan attacks with precision. It was not merely hunting for survival, it was hunting as an art, a meticulous Predator analyzing every variable before committing to action. A patrol of Imperial Guardsmen entered a narrow corridor flanked by broken scaffolding and smoldering machinery. The Predator observed from a high ledge, its cloaking device rendering it nearly invisible against the flickering fires. It studied the Guardsmen, noting their formation, the gaps in their vigilance, the subtle signs of hesitation and fear that betrayed their humanity. The first strike was subtle, a faint motion from above, a soundless descent, and a single target neutralized before the others even realized the danger. Panic spread, and instinctive reactions caused the patrol to break formation, each guardsman moving independently to assess the threat. The predator analyzed these reactions, calculating optimal angles for further engagement, using the city's ruins to manipulate both movement and perception. The predator's methods were not merely physical but psychological. It understood the impact of fear, anticipation, and uncertainty on the humans it stalked. Shadows seemed to move independently. Strange noises echoed through the corridors, and thermal readings fluctuated unpredictably. The guardsmen found themselves reacting to phantom threats, while the predator remained unseen, a constant and invisible pressure shaping their behavior. Its strikes became increasingly precise, each one exploiting the momentary lapse in focus created by the tension it had orchestrated. Even when a guardsman attempted to track its position, thermal and motion sensors were deceived by subtle manipulations of the environment, smoke and debris, allowing the predator to remain one step ahead. Among the chaos, the predator observed minor skirmishes between rival gangs of scavengers and rogue psykers attempting to manipulate the warp to their advantage. The predator analyzed each threat with meticulous detail, distinguishing between minor nuisances and potentially dangerous targets. It understood that intervention had to be efficient and strategic, conserving energy and ensuring that every action reinforced its dominance over the cityscape. The predator's targeting systems highlighted vulnerable points, predicted movement patterns, and calculated probabilities of success for each possible strike. Its approach combined instinct and technology, blending physical prowess with analytical foresight, ensuring that each encounter would end decisively. A rogue psyker attempted to summon a minor warp manifestation in a deserted square, drawing attention with a faint, flickering glow. The predator descended silently from the shadows, landing with perfect balance atop a nearby pile of rubble. Its wrist blades extended, sensors calibrated to compensate for psychic distortions, and it advanced with deliberate precision. The psyker, sensing a sudden disturbance in the air, but unable to locate its source, faltered. In an instant, the predator struck, neutralizing the psychic threat with surgical efficiency. The guardsmen, alerted by the psychic flares but unaware of the predator's presence, were now fully engaged in a hunt they could not understand, their morale shaken and confusion mounting. Through it all, the predator maintained absolute control, moving across the city like a shadow, unseen yet omnipresent. Every ruined corridor, collapsed bridge, and smoldering tower became part of its hunting ground, exploited with intelligence and patience. Its attacks were methodical, its observation meticulous, and its psychological manipulation as effective as its lethal weaponry. The Hive City had become a living extension of the predator's mind, a battlefield molded by its presence, where fear, anticipation, and precise execution dictated the flow of events. The chaos in the Hive City had reached a fever pitch, a cacophony of fire, smoke, and desperate screams echoing through the twisted metal and stone of the shattered streets. Into this maelstrom entered the predator, a figure of silent menace and absolute control, its cloaking device shimmering faintly against the dim glow of industrial fires. From a vantage point atop a half-collapsed spire, it observed the movements of its potential prey with cold precision, thermal vision cutting through the smoke to reveal clusters of heat signatures moving through the debris-laden streets. Imperial Guardsmen, scavenger gangs, rogue psykers, and even stray orcs were all present in this urban battlefield, each a potential target, each an unpredictable variable in the hunt that the predator had meticulously calculated. The predator's first assessment focused on the patterns of movement among the Imperial Guardsmen. They moved in disciplined formations, their bolters held ready, scanning shadows and corners with disciplined precision. Yet, despite their training, subtle inconsistencies in posture, hesitation in response times, and momentary glances betrayed their humanity. The predator cataloged these micro-behaviors, analyzing how fear, exhaustion, and the uncertainty of being hunted would influence their actions. Every deviation from the perfect drill, every shift in balance or grip on a weapon became a data point, a way to predict reactions and determine the optimal moment for attack. Its mind worked with clinical precision, blending instinct, observation, and advanced technology into a seamless hunting strategy. High above the streets, the predator moved silently along fractured catwalks and twisted beams, each landing deliberate and measured to avoid detection. Thermal sensors highlighted hidden threats, from rogue psykers attempting to manipulate the warp, to scavenger gangs moving unpredictably through alleyways. The city itself became a part of the hunt, its collapsing structures, burning vehicles, and smoldering debris offering both cover and tactical advantage. The predator calculated trajectories, predicting where each opponent might move in response to environmental changes, and adapted its approach to maintain both stealth and tactical dominance. A small patrol of guardsmen entered a narrow corridor flanked by collapsed scaffolding. The predator observed from above, noting their formation, their spacing, and the subtle signs of tension and uncertainty in their movements. With a silent leap, it descended into their path, striking the first target with wrist blades extended. The attack was swift and precise, eliminating the guardsmen before the others could react. Panic rippled through the patrol, instinct overriding training as they broke formation and attempted to cover each other. The predator observed these reactions, using the chaos to predict subsequent movements, positioning itself for the next strike. Its methodology was not merely about killing. It was about shaping the battlefield, controlling perception, and manipulating fear to achieve maximum psychological and tactical advantage. The Hive Cities landscape amplified the predator's strategic capabilities. Collapsing bridges, narrow alleys, and unstable rooftops provided both obstacles and opportunities. The predator exploited these features, luring enemies into predictable paths, forcing them into zones where escape routes were limited and vulnerability was maximized. Smoke and fire obscured its movements, sound dampened by the constant roar of destruction, while thermal imaging ensured it could track prey even when visual confirmation was impossible. Every step, every leap, every adjustment of its cloak and blades was a calculated response to the dynamic environment, a demonstration of superior adaptability and lethal foresight. Amid the guardsmen, rogue psykers attempted to summon minor warp manifestations to disrupt the city's chaotic order. The predator identified these disturbances immediately, recognizing the psychic signatures as both threats and opportunities. It approached with calculated precision, using elevated vantage points to remain hidden, observing the moment when concentration faltered, and striking with surgical efficiency. Each psyker was neutralized before they could fully manifest their power, the attacks swift, silent, and final. The guardsmen, already on edge from unseen threats, were further disoriented by the sudden disappearance of these powerful individuals, reinforcing a pervasive sense of fear and uncertainty that the predator manipulated expertly. Even orcs, wandering through the city, became part of the predator's hunt. Their unpredictable, brutal movements provided opportunities to test and refine strategy, observing how raw aggression reacted to invisible predation. The predator adapted instantly, timing its strikes to exploit gaps in their perception, using both environmental hazards and its own superior agility to maximize effect. Each engagement demonstrated not just raw lethality, but the predator's ability to integrate complex variables into a coherent, fluid hunting methodology. As the day wore on, the predator moved continuously through the ruined Hive City, combining stealth, observation, and precision strikes to assert complete dominance over the battlefield. Its actions were deliberate, methodical, and psychologically devastating. Enemies fell silently, fear rippled through survivors, and the city itself became a weapon in the hands of a master hunter. Every structural collapse, every flare of heat, every shiver of movement was accounted for, calculated, and exploited to maintain superiority. The predator was not merely hunting for sustenance or sport. It was orchestrating a controlled, dynamic, and terrifying ballet of predation, where knowledge, patience, and timing were as lethal as its blades.